this is Ed Franklin with the Ed Franklin No Limits podcast. I'm glad you're joining me. I know I haven't been as consistent as I'd like to be, and there's a couple reasons for that I'll talk about in a little bit. But one of the main reasons is I just don't want to do a podcast and just ramble on about the same thing I always ramble on about, although I'm going to talk about a lot of things I talk about on a regular basis. I just think that, there's just a lot of rhetoric. I could just talk about the weather, talk about this, talk about that. And I always want to give you some substance. So I do have some substance today that we're going to talk about, but it's November 15th, which I can't believe. I want a couple shout outs. Last Friday was the birthday of the Marines, I think 245 years. And I have a lot of Marine friends. And so I want to say happy birthday to those Marines and to the Corps itself. I'm appreciative of the military in all aspects, and especially the Marine Corps. And of course, the next day was Veterans Day, and I have a lot of veterans in my family. I know a lot of veterans. Friends, I know a lot of veterans we've lost, and I want to shout out to the veterans. If it wasn't for you, I couldn't sit here and do what I'm doing right now, because you keep us free and all those things. And a lot of you might just think that's bullshit. I do not think it's that way. If you look at other countries, and I know we're not perfect right now by any means. Our leadership is definitely questionable at this point. Our future leadership is questionable, but we still live in the powerhouse, and I appreciate it every day that I can get up and do what I want. And as much as I have to tolerate other people, the reason they can do the things they want is because of our veterans and our military power and all those great things. So hats off to the Marines, hats off to the veterans. I really appreciate that. And like I said, it's November 15th today. Next week already is Thanksgiving. I'm telling you, when you get older, it just seems like it flies by, like it goes so fast. And I'm sitting here in a sweatshirt because we're actually having cold, rainy weather. And yesterday it was like 80 degrees. I think tomorrow or the next day, I think on Thanksgiving it's supposed to be 78. So the weather's going to improve again. And for all you people on the West Coast, which I would say east of California, we're not used to the cold weather. So when it does get into 60s, we're freezing. And I know that is a joke to you, but it's not to us. So I was driving around today, and it was starting to pour. So something I wanted to talk about real quick, and then we'll get down to kind of why I got on here, was I post something on Facebook every day. If you're a friend of mine on Facebook, you would see that I try to post something motivational, or something that I find interesting. And last week I posted something, and it says this: the person that looks out for everyone is always alone when they need somebody. And I feel like that a lot of times, because I used to help people out a lot. I just drop, and I'd still do it. If someone needed something, I'll drop whatever I'm doing to try to go help them, or talk to them, or do whatever I can to ease their pain, or get them through, sit in the mud with them. I've talked about that saying before. But again, the person that looks out for everybody is always alone when they need somebody. The reason I brought it up is because I got so many likes on this post and a lot of comments, and which is really sad, because it tells me that those people are in the same boat. It's hard to get through life without other people that, and I know people will say that they like it that way, and this and that. They don't. They like that human interaction. And I was on a networking event yesterday, and it was nice to see some people and to talk to people. I'm in sales, so when I do go out, I do meet people. I do talk to people on a regular basis. I'm a chatty person at the grocery store or whatever. So, but I have reached out to people for help, and reached out to people for different things, and get really no response. And it really makes me sad. And apparently a lot of other people, it makes them sad too. So I don't know, man, keep that in mind. If someone needs something, help them out if you can, or whatever. We can't live in a place where you didn't help me, I'm not helping you. Sometimes I want to live in that place, but we still have to be helpful. Because a couple of days later, I posted something else that said, some people will only love you as much as they can use you. Their loyalty ends where the benefits stop. And man, again, another post that kind of hit me where I breathed. I was in a position to help a lot of people in different leadership positions, and I did everything I could to help those people. If I failed, it was because they stopped interacting. I follow with people constantly and just ask them how they're doing, see if everything's okay. And I don't know. I just thought those two posts were kind of related to each other. And I think it's really sad that people agreed with me because they're in the same boat I am. So, guys, we got to watch out for each other as much as we can, especially our families and our close friends. And many times I posted during my birthday that my close friends that I had a lot more of when I was in Poway, you couldn't tell the difference between them and family. So it's a little bit sad. I mean, here we are outside, and it kind of started with COVID a lot, and then but we got to get over it, man. We got to push through and get over that. Is that kind of come back? I mean, it's going to come back at some level, but I don't think it'll ever come back like it did during COVID the last couple of years. So those are two things that I just wanted to bring up. And if you noticed on Facebook and or LinkedIn, I talked about getting out there and doing speaking, and I really am jumping off the cliff. I'm going to get out there. I do have a job that I do under, my full-time job, but the speaking I'm so passionate about. And I'll tell you kind of how that all came about. In the 1980s, I was very ambitious, still am, I think. And I was always wanting to do better and move up and at companies and things like that. And I did. And I would go to networking events back then as a young man and talk to people and open up and kind of learn, kind of get out of my comfort zone and talk to people a lot. And I remember buying the Tony Robbins the cassette, pack that was called The Power Within Us or something like that, something about power. And I would listen to those constantly, and I kind of learned. I just thought, kind of like, some of you want to be a rock star, some of you want to be an athlete. I wanted to be a speaker, and this is in the 80s. This is in my 20s that I wanted to do this. And of course, then I got married, started having kids, and it kind of got put on the back burner because I had kids and I was married, so I had things to do and take care of. And then, oddly enough, it kind of resurfaced in like the 2000s. So I had this job. And I'm always cautious about calling people out and I've said this before on my podcast, because I don't necessarily want to embarrass them or bring them up, but I'm fucking calling these guys out because they did something that really hurt my progress in 2008 or 2009, right in there. So I was working for this company. I was selling HVAC products, exhaust fans, dampers, lubricants, things like that. And I get really good at that job. I caught on quick. I had been, I went on 100% commission after like 5 months, which I could have waited a year. They were giving me a year to wait, but I wanted to get out there. And I did very good. I was doing really good job with sales. We were selling a lot of lab exhaust fans. In 2007, I was the #1 salesman in the world for lab exhaust fans. I think it was 2007. Because San Diego, it wasn't all because of me. San Diego was just building up their research and development companies over on Pill Hill, which in Torrey Pines, all those labs and pharmaceutical companies and everything. So I was selling a lot of product, and I was taking customers back to the factory, which our company had never done, but this option was out there that we could do it. And every time I would take somebody back to the factory, we would get a good sale out of it. I mean, a big sale. I was even taking my boss's customers because they didn't want to go. So I would take them back to the factory, and they do a dog and pony show there for the customers, and it's just so impressive. And this company was so impressive. I loved working with them. In fact, I had an opportunity to go to work for them directly last year or the beginning of this year, and it didn't work out. I just wasn't, they kind of have a cookie cutter version of who they want to work. I don't have the education that they wanted. I had the contacts and the knowledge, but it didn't work out, whatever. And I don't hold any resentment against them for that. I'm not 25, and they're probably looking for somebody 25 or 30 years old to take over that position. Anyway, so I'm working for this company. I'm kicking ass. And 2009, 2008 come around, and we were having real economic woes, right? The interest rates were getting all screwed up. We had this, you guys all remember, if you're my age or younger, around 2008, 2009, the economy just hit the skids. They were laying people off left and right. And it was a little bit slow. And I went into this, they called me in, and it was the first time I never hit my draw, but I had a bunch of product in PO, and it was getting ordered. They just didn't order it that month. So it looked like I was behind. And the way we got paid back then is you would get a base salary, and then twice a year you would sit down and you'd say, okay, you made this much in commission and you took this much in your draw, and they subtracted it. And if you're on the positive side, which I was every time, I would get a big check, and that was how I get my commission. So we sat down, and our owner had a surgery, and he had a stroke while he was on the table. So he wasn't just the same guy. He was a little bit loopy. He was an older gentleman anyway, and had a great reputation in San Diego. He built his business here and knew all the engineers and everybody. Everybody knew him, loved him. Good guy, very modest man. Didn't really lose his temper at all or whatever. But he was getting to a point where he didn't want to go out and call on people, so we hired us salespeople to go out and do that. And so he has this stroke, and he's coming back, and he's not 100%. You could tell something was a little off about him. Like he almost didn't have dementia, but he was maybe starting to lean towards that, where he was starting to have some problems. And he's in his 70s, but so he had a co-owner, and we sat down together, and they said, you're behind on your draw. And I said, it's no big deal. I have these POs that are coming. I already have, I have signed submittals. I have everything. The business is coming. They just didn't order it that month. So he says, so what are you going to do? I said, well, I got to do what I got to do. And he took that the wrong way. I really meant it as I just have to go find more business. I have to make more calls. I have to do whatever I have to do to try to get more business. And they fired me right there on the spot. It was a Thursday and Tuesday maybe. And I was just blown away. I mean, I was so fucking shocked because there was no reason to let me go. I was one of the top, one or two sales guys in the company, selling tons of stuff, had a huge job at Children's Hospital with a contractor, and everything was moving along great. And this guy lets me go. And here I had dedicated a lot of years to this company, a lot of hours. I remember one time Kit had an operation, and her mom went to the operation so I could travel back to the Midwest to go to this factory for a sales meeting. I mean, I dedicated a lot of time, spent a lot of money on this job. I had a trailer with displays in it and everything that I paid for. And when they did it, he says to me, why don't you just go out and do motivational speaking? That's what you want to do anyway. And it's funny he said that, because it was when I got turned on to the book Good to Great, and I got turned on to it from this company that I'm talking about that was this manufacturer of fans. They had this really good CEO, probably one of the best CEOs, leaders I've ever met in my life. And of course, I didn't work for him, but I was a manufacturer's rep for that company. And I mean, but he said that, it just kind of struck me as being odd that he would say that. So here I am without a job. I had to sue the company, and I won, because they didn't want to pay me my commissions. But this guy kind of blackballed me in the industry because he had been around forever. And he was such a nice guy. No, he never fired anybody, I don't think, his whole life. And here I get fired. So everybody looks at me like I'm a shithead. And I could not break back into this business. So and still haven't since. And it really hurt me personally. It hurt me financially. It hurt me. It hurt me as a friend too, because they had come to my wedding with Kit and all that. And it was, it was real shitty. And the guy, the co-owner, the company ended up getting bought out, and there was always talk of us getting some share of this company as employees, that we would get some ownership. And I was always looking forward to that, because it was a great model for a company. We had a great reputation, and we were kicking ass. And so all that went down the drain, right? And then, like I said, I think whether he did it directly or it just kind of happened on its own, I just kind of got blackballed out of that industry. And that's what I knew. I had been doing it for 9 years. And I was good at it and all those things. So, but the owner, he passed away a couple of years later, and the co-owner sold the company to this big ass company in town, and probably made a ton of money. And I would have been able to benefit from that too. And all the salesmen, they still work there, except one guy passed away, but they still work there, still got their fucking jobs. And I would reach out to them all the time. Kind of goes back to those things I said in the beginning, and I get nothing, no response, nothing. I didn't do anything to them either, by the way. So it sounds like I'm whining about it. It was, I've never really talked about it. I have definitely not talked about it on this podcast, but it's reality. And it was a trauma that I had to go through, that my family had to go through. We had to switch gears a lot right then. A lot was going on in our family. Personal stuff, a lot was going on too. Not anything, that we created. It was just, age of people and some other things. And, a lot of stuff was going on, and then that happened. So it was this time of, and I don't know if it's ever turned around 100% back to where I want it to be from that time, since 2009. So we're talking 14 years now. But you know what? There's no more fucking excuses. I'm not gonna allow that to affect me any longer. It's in the past. There's nothing I can change about it. There's nothing. It's not an industry that I necessarily would want to go into tomorrow unless there was a great opportunity that I could flourish in. So I guess the point is these things happen in life. This is what, as I was going through COVID and I was trying to figure out what, if I want to be a public speaker and I really want to do this, what am I going to talk about? Because I didn't want to just do the normal, I'm going to be a business coach, or I'm going to be this or that. I wanted to talk about something that was tangible, that really helped everybody, not just one group of people. I didn't want to train salespeople. Because first of all, I think a lot of the bullshit is just training salespeople is just bullshit a lot of times. You either have it sometimes or you don't. Yes, there are some techniques you can teach salespeople, but really salespeople, it's about having a personality that you can communicate with people and look for their problems and blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to train you in sales. So when COVID happened, and I talked about this, let me back up a little bit. So about 5 years later, I said, you know what? And I think I told the story. I said to Kit, I'm done with construction. Had worked for the competitor for a while, and I worked in the crane business. I said, I'm going to get into something different. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to look for speaking opportunities and get out in front of people. Well, at the time, in about 2014, our church was building a new hall. And so I found the people that were in charge of that. And what they were doing is they were going around to groups of people, parishioners, and you would talk to them about the hall and tell them about it and why they should donate to it and why there's what advantage. They do this a lot in churches. They do it a lot with charities where people will go out and talk about, these things. So I did that. And this guy kept asking me to take over his times when it was time to speak and this and that. And I didn't mind because I wanted to get out in front of people. Well, this guy that was asking me to do that ended up hiring me at Allstate Moving Systems. And the idea was to go do some things with this company. And I'm not going to dig up that whole thing, but my point is that it worked. I kind of made it. So I know I've told this story. I get to this guy that's a world-renowned speaker. He had run Ken Blanchard's companies for many years and did very well, took them worldwide from just national. And so I sit down with him and I kind of want to pick his brain, right? You want to learn how to bodybuild, go talk to a bodybuilder. You want to be rich, go talk to a billionaire, whatever. This guy was a speaker. And I wanted to learn how to speak. So I go to a speaker and find, what do I got to do? And he says to me, well, the problem is, Ed, that you don't have anything to talk about because you've never done anything in your life. And I was so shocked when he told me that. I was at the Starbucks in Poway, right by the theater. And I couldn't believe what he just told me that. I've never had anybody tell me that in my life, that I couldn't do something. So I kind of, the conversation lasted a few more minutes, and I went out to my car and I kind of sat in the car and just was puzzled that he would say that and say, oh my God, I've been chasing this dream all this time and I don't even, I have nothing, I can't do it. And, that kind of wore me down. This is why you got to be careful who you're talking to about things, because they can kind of suck the life out of you for a few minutes and you don't want to, or a few years. and I was blown away. I would never say that. I would never have said anything like that to anybody. I would have said, well, maybe if maybe you need to do this and that, and then you'd have this experience and you could craft your speech around this. I was just blown away. And I had respect for this guy. I'm not sure I have that anymore because it was just so rude. I was just blown away. So fast forward to COVID. I lose my job. Everybody's losing their jobs. My whole job was getting people, involved in the chamber and getting people in a room. And, I had taken over that chamber job as just a temporary thing and ended up being a full-time chamber person there. And that's another podcast and story. But I hired a business coach. In fact, she's been on my podcast. It's Deborah Sweet. And this 3 months that I hired her, it almost ended up being more of a, she almost ended up being more of a psychologist than a business coach, because she was drawing some things out of me. And a lot of it was stuff in the past that I was holding on to, working at that company, stuff my dad did or whatever like that. I don't have any trauma from my dad. It was just things that would come up, and divorces and all this bullshit stuff that I just needed to let go and put behind me. It didn't matter anymore. We're moving forward from that. But I really started to kind of hone the idea of me going out public speaking. And like I said, if you've seen you're going to see a lot more social media about this, maybe emails, things like that, about me getting out and talking to companies. The one thing she did say to me that I did not agree with, and I still don't agree with, is she says, you got to have something to sell. When you're done talking to somebody, you got to have a book, you got to have a CD, you got to have, this widget, that widget, whatever widget. But I kind of disagree. I disagree with that vehemently, because I don't think I don't need to have something to sell to them, because what I'm doing with them speaking wise is what the value is. Okay. They don't need to take a book home. I've talked about this to you before. My whole goal here is to get people to take care of themselves personally, because as I went through all these layers of what to talk to people about, and I hear these speakers, I'm constantly listening to speakers, constantly, and they have this value, and they're an expert in this, and they're an expert in that. And the funniest one is it's a great metaphor, is the gym. Because what I'll do is I'll hear a guy talk about how he's going to build his biceps up, and he does it like this. And the next, 3 TikTok pages down, I get another guy, and he says, no, that guy it doesn't work for him, or that doesn't work. This is what works. And 3 more times later, oh no, that doesn't work. This is what works. This is better. This is what you should take. This is a supplement. No, don't take that supplement. Take this one. Everybody's so bent on being an expert that they'll just make shit up. And if they're convincing, like a lot of these speakers are very convincing, they're very good salespeople, they can convince you to do something that won't benefit you. A lot of it will benefit you, and a lot of the information they give is very good information. I just hate the matter of fact. Like, if you don't do it my way, it's not going to work, right? If you don't breathe like this, you're going to stop breathing. Well, that's fucking ridiculous, right? So I wanted to kind of craft my goals, craft my topic that would help everybody. And what I've come up with, and again, not an expert at all, not a psychologist, but after being, alive for 61 years, being in sales over 35 years, having 8 children, 19 grandchildren, talking to people, learning about people, I can almost tell you what somebody's going to say or do based on what I tell them or what I say to them. I can know what their reaction is going to be. And believe me, on an evil side of it, I do say things to people sometimes because I know the reaction I'm going to get. And sometimes I'm looking for a bad reaction. Okay. To be honest with you, I'm very good at hurting people's feelings if I feel like it. I don't do it intentionally often, but it does happen once in a while where I can hurt someone's feelings with just a sentence, and something I need to get over. But by the same token, I can say something positive to somebody and get a good reaction out of them, or get a good motivation, something that will motivate them or inspire them to move forward and do something, really well. So I feel like the only thing that I can come up with, now let me rephrase that. What I came up with is something that every one of us deals with. And I've talked about having trauma in your life and dealing with it, having trauma in the past, having trauma currently, and knowing that there's probably going to be some trauma in the future that you're going to have to learn to deal with. And if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not reading the right things and being around the right people and exercising and filling your brain with nutrition and filling your body with nutrition, you cannot operate at a high level. You cannot be the best version of yourself. Even if you've got a person, and I have proof of this from people I've talked to that I thought had it all together, and you get them in private or you get them off to the side and they start bleeding out on you. And I'm saying, wow, you got some shit you got to deal with in your life. And it's affecting you in a negative way when you try to take care of those kids or take care of your wife or parents or brothers or sisters or employees. And I'm talking everybody from an entry-level employee to a CEO. We all need to deal with things in our life, and we don't do it. We either think we don't have time, or we think that it's not important, or we think we can just handle it. Just handling it makes you crazy, because you're going to get to a point in your life where you can't handle it anymore if you don't deal with it now. You're going to get so much gunk in your brain and in your heart and in your veins everywhere. You're not going to be able to be the best version of yourself. So obviously, this is not the speech I give. I'm just telling you kind of the ideas and the points that I'm making. And this is why I think it's so beneficial for me to go to a company or go to an organization and talk about this, because everybody's dealing with something. Nobody has an exception. My son's boss is worth $35 billion, and I won't tell you who he is because I don't need to tell you where my son works. But I'll guarantee you, if I sat down with him for an hour, I could find something out about him that he's dealing with on a trauma level that he needs to deal with. And it could be exercise. It could be a lot of different things. I will tell you, the most successful people in the world have dealt with a lot of this stuff already. They still have something to deal with, and the best ones know they have something to deal with. The problem is we're letting America, who's in the worst situation for self-esteem in the history, we have half the people in America are depressed. They're having a hell of a time getting through life, and they need to turn that around. And they're the only ones that can do it. You know, they can hire somebody to help them, but they really need to make up their mind that they're going to be able to do this on their own. And it's not horribly tough as long as you're doing baby steps. You're just doing a little bit at a time. I think people get so overwhelmed, they just say, fuck it, I'm not going to do it. Well, you got to do it. You got to do it. Especially, I was talking to somebody the other day. I drove to Poway High School for 13 years, taking kids to school. We had sports to take kids to. We had friends that they hung out with. We had, and take them to their parents. We had parties to go to. We had all this stuff going on, and I loved it. That was one of the best times of my life when I was raising my kids, when I had that day-to-day that day-to-day interaction with my kids. Because first of all, I was insanely busy. I loved being that busy. And as that started dropping off, it started affecting me personally. Like my self-worth was going down. I felt like I didn't have enough to do to keep, to keep my sanity. Right. So then I started getting a little bored. So then you start drinking maybe, or you start doing this, or you start doing that, or you start not going to the gym, or you start getting lazy. And that's what kills us. Right. And this is why I always, I don't kid about it, but I tell you, people, man, so many people that I know that have retired and then they just die because they have all this stuff going for so long. You can't just stop. It's like trying to stop a flywheel. If you don't know what a flywheel, it's a very heavy wheel that takes a lot to get going. But once it's going, you just got to touch it once in a while and it keeps moving. Well, try to stop that flywheel, it'll crush you. So part of my point to this podcast is that this is where I need to get for a lot of reasons. First of all, it helps me get back into society, helping them and doing what I'm passionate about. And that's talking to people and helping them get right with themselves, helping them be the best version of themselves. And I think I can do that because I'm not exactly where I need to be. I said this before, it's hard to relate to, say, a Navy SEAL, right? Navy SEALs, they go through this crazy training. There was this really athletic guy on TikTok that tried to do their training, and he was in Coronado, and he talked to these two SEALs, and they said, yeah, this course has to be run in 12 minutes. And this guy's in wicked good shape. And he says, no problem. He says, what's your best? And he says, there's this little guy there, looked like he's about 5'10", looked in great shape, but 5'8" maybe. He had done this course in like 8 minutes. So this guy that's trying it out says, shit, I could kill that, So he starts the course, and I'm watching this thing, and I'm watching the time lapse. It took him 19 minutes to finish this thing, and I thought they were going to have to put paddles on his chest. I mean, this was so hard. My point to that is these Navy SEALs are so well trained. They're so in such good shape, mental shape, physical shape. They have the ability to stay in this cold water for hours and kind of move their mind out of this thing. David Goggins is another one that you can, I've talked about him before. He has a great book out there and you guys should all read it. Sorry about that. But it's hard to relate to them because, first of all, you're never going to go over and have to kill a terrorist, and sneak in SEAL Team 6 kind of stuff. There's so few SEALs in the world in American history that you probably don't even know one, and I just think it's hard to relate to. It's kind of like, well, they're kind of on this level and you're down here, and there's just no way to relate to these guys. But the advantage I have there is that I can relate to just about anybody because I've been there. I've been down, I've been out. I've had money, I've not had money. I know warnings, I know signals that I need to watch out for me to be successful and for you to be successful too. So as you see those advertisements come over for this public speaking, I'm really looking at speaking at groups, organizations, could be a nonprofit group, church group. I won't cut to church groups. Companies that have employees, the more people, the better for me. It's kind of like when you ride a bike, the faster you go, the easier it is to stay up. If I have a better time talking to 1,000 people than I do 10. And I've done these speeches and I've done these talks before, and I want to turn it into a part-time business at this point and then move up and get any more. But for right now, I'm just looking for opportunities, and I'm happy to talk to owners or group organizers or whoever and kind of tell them what the path is. I have a better outline than I'm talking about right now because, frankly, I'm just wanting to kind of give you an overview of what's going on. And the podcast is going to help with marketing and things like that. Which brings me to you. If you can do me a favor and share these podcasts on social media, tell your friends about my podcast, have them subscribe to my YouTube channel. It would help. It helps me with all these things. It helps get people to at least see how I speak, see if I'm, the person they want to come to. It's funny. I was on a podcast a couple of weeks ago with this guy named Travis Johnson. It was a really good podcast. And he said to me, "Is that how you dress?" And I think I had a collar shirt on, but I had a hat on and glasses, just like I look right now. And I said, "I do." And I said, "I'll tell you why. I mean, I have black suits in my closet. I have ties, I have dress shirts, I have all that stuff. I just don't think it's me anymore. That could have been me when I was 30, 35 years old, maybe 40. It's just not me. I want to be as organic and as real as I can be. And this is me. This is what I dress like every day. Doesn't hurt anybody's feelings. It's not provocative at all. It's very much just Ed Franklin, and this is what you get, and you get what you get, kind of thing. Does that go over well in big business? I don't care. I'm really not there. If they need a polished guy in a suit and tie and a $3,000 suit and tie, I'm the wrong guy for them anyway. So although my message would be perfect for them, these are exactly the people I'm looking for, because they're the ones that think they don't have a problem. You think about it, Tony Robbins and Jack Canfield and all these guys that are these great speakers, motivational, inspirational, whatever you want to call them. If you start digging into their life, they've been divorced 3 or 4 times, all of them, just about every one of them. Not every one of them, obviously, but a lot of them have been. And here they're talking about you mastering relationships, and they can't master relationships. So what does that tell you? That's the one thing I'm not out there to do when my public speaking is telling people how to do this. This is something they've got to figure out on their own. Do I have suggestions? Of course I have suggestions. I told you before, I started going to the gym at 5 a.m. It's been about 5 months now. And it works for me. It's changed my life. It's got me more organized. It's got me feeling better in the morning when it's time to get moving. I'm putting on muscle. Everything's going great. I still need to address my diet at another level. But it's these little things. I can give you suggestions. Is my way the perfect way? The hell no. Some people, like Kit, will not going to get up at 4 a.m. with me and go to the gym. She does other things. That's fine. I'm not, and again, I'll tell you, I'm not an expert. I'm just a human. And I've been around long enough, and I've learned some shit after being around this long, and being in different businesses and working with a variety of different types of people and races and whatever you want to come up with. I've picked up some stuff, and the stuff is good information. So I appreciate you listening to my podcast today. Please, if you can, share my podcast, tell people about the podcast. Help me get out there in the world and make my mark. This is something I've been passionate about a long time, and I'm not messing around anymore. I'm going to go out and do this. And I could fail terribly. I don't care. Obviously I care if I fail, but there's always ways to get over those little failures. Am I going to be perfect when I'm out there speaking? No. Am I going to get better at it? Of course I am. You always get better at something you do a lot. So I'm asking you, I'm begging you to share my podcast, help me out there. And listen, if you want to contact me, you can contact me at edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com. If you've got guests, if you've got ideas for a podcast, something I can talk about just about everything. And if I don't know something about something or anything about something, I'll find an expert that does, and we can get them on the podcast and talk about it. I want to just make this podcast just a place for you guys to go and for new listeners to go and just kind of hang out and just talk about real life shit, right? I don't have any, I have tons of stories, but I don't have any stories about like going to the moon or anything like that. I have not, gone deep sea fishing. I haven't done, I haven't discovered anything, haven't invented anything. And that's okay, because I've lived 61 years. I've had a great life. I have a great family, and I've had great jobs, and I've had good jobs that I was unhappy in, and I've had bad jobs that I was super happy in. So figure that out. Think about what I just said. Anyway, Ed Franklin, No Limits Podcast, edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com. I'll have another podcast next week prior to Thanksgiving, so I'm not going to wish you Thanksgiving today. Again, to my Marine friends, happy birthday to the Marines, and my veteran friends, happy Veterans Day. I appreciate you. More people should appreciate you. I'm glad that we've changed, that's turned around during my lifetime, that we appreciate the military more, and we're not, being so hard on them. So if I missed something today, that's why we have more than one podcast. Anyway, have a great weekend. I will see you before Thanksgiving, and probably going to have a podcast about Thanksgiving. I might do a live podcast actually, and see what's up. But anyway, Ed Franklin, No Limits. Have a great week, and I love all you guys, and I want you to succeed and be the best version of yourself. Thank you very much for listening.